This is a massive setback for U.S. President Donald Trump. His sweeping global tariffs have now been struck down by the U.S. Supreme Court. The verdict came just a short while ago. 6 out of 9 judges ruled that Trump's tariffs are illegal. Only 3 judges sided with the U.S. president. This is undoubtedly one of the biggest blows to the Trump presidency. It effectively unravels months of threats, negotiations, and trade deals. It is difficult to overstate how significant this ruling is not just for the United States, but for the entire world.
Donald Trump built both his foreign and domestic policy around these tariffs. They were the centerpiece of his economic strategy.
He first announced the tariffs in April last year, a baseline of 10%, along with varying rates for different countries. Trump argued that these tariffs would eliminate the U.S. trade deficit and bring manufacturing jobs back to America. Even then, many experts were skeptical. Under U.S. law, sweeping tariffs require approval from the U.S. Congress. But President Trump did not seek congressional approval. Instead, he invoked an old emergency law from the 1970s to justify the move. That decision triggered lawsuits from businesses in several U.S. states, all arguing that the tariffs were unlawful. Today, the U.S. Supreme Court agreed with them. The court has ruled that the tariffs were indeed illegal. Despite this verdict, 3 major questions remain. First, will the Trump administration attempt to reimpose the tariffs using a different legal route? The White House had reportedly prepared for this possibility, so a renewed tariff push cannot be ruled out. Second, what happens to the roughly $250 billion already collected through these tariffs? Will that money be refunded? The Supreme Court has left that issue to lower courts, meaning the matter is still unresolved. Third, what becomes of the trade deals negotiated under the tariff regime? Will countries seek fresh negotiations, or will they revert to earlier agreements? These are the developments to watch closely. Earlier today, President Trump was reportedly on a call with American governors. According to reports, he described the Supreme Court's decision as a disgrace. As recently as yesterday, Trump was defending his trade policy. He wrote that the United States trade deficit had been reduced by 78% because of the tariffs and claimed it would turn positive this year. But what is a trade deficit? It occurs when a country imports more than it exports. If imports stand at $100 billion and exports at $50 billion, the deficit is $50 billion, the gap between the two. For decades, the United States has run a trade deficit. Its last surplus was in 1975. Reducing that deficit was a key promise of Trump's campaign. However, the official data tells a different story. In 2025, the U.S. goods deficit reached $1.24 trillion, about 2% higher than the previous year. In fact, it is the highest deficit since 1960. So the claim that the deficit fell by 78% does not align with the official numbers. Instead of shrinking, it actually increased. Imports rose by 4.7% last year, totaling $4.3 trillion. Exports did grow by 6.2%, which is a positive sign. But that increase is not translated into job creation. One of the central goals of the tariff plan was to revive American manufacturing jobs. Yet, American manufacturers cut around 80,000 jobs last year. So the deficit is at a historic high, and factory jobs are being reduced. What then did the tariffs accomplish? They reshaped America's import patterns. The U.S. trade deficit with China fell from $295 billion in 2024 to $202 billion last year, a drop of 26%. The deficit with Europe declined by 7%. However, deficits widened significantly with other countries. They rose nearly 44% with Vietnam, 14% with Mexico, almost 97% with Taiwan, and around 28% with India. Imports from China dropped by nearly 30%, reaching their lowest level since 2009. This indicates that supply chains are shifting rather than disappearing. We witnessed a similar trend during Trump's first term, when tariffs on China created opportunities for countries like Vietnam and Thailand. Now, if deficits with these alternative suppliers continue to grow, they too could face tariff threats. In fact, Trump has already imposed 20% tariffs on several Southeast Asian nations, tariffs that have now been declared illegal. But the broader strategy remains uncertain. Will the White House adjust course or continue pressing forward? There's also the risk of a cycle. When China's surplus rises, tariffs are imposed. If India's surplus grows, tariffs follow. The same could happen with Vietnam or others. Breaking that cycle will require a shift in approach. No single country can produce everything. Trade deficits are not automatically harmful. They can also reflect economic strength and higher consumer demand. Wages in America are significantly higher than in many manufacturing hubs, making overseas production cheaper. This is not necessarily a conspiracy, it is the reality of global economics. For now, attention turns to how President Trump responds to the Supreme Court's decision. 6 out of 9 judges have ruled that the tariffs violated federal law. Catch the full story on that historic tragedy at these times. Only on Veridox News. Thank you for watching Veridox News. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more in-depth global coverage.